Good afternoon, Year 10. Last of our poetry sessions this week and before half term. So we've blitzed the poetry a bit this week. We've done another 4. If you find time over half term, if you haven't managed to get them all down, all these lessons are on YouTube, as I'm sure you know. You can go and find them and finish them off then. But it's important, if you can, that you get them done. Anyway, before we go on to the next poem, I want you to write down 3 quotations from Morning Song from memory. And then from at least one of those quotations, do a quotation explosion that explores language and structure devices. I'll give you 8 minutes to do that, then on to the next slide. Learning objective today is to read and analyse Long Distance 2 by Harrison. The title is Long Distance 2 by Harrison. Some says 11 there, that's actually right. It should say Long Distance 2 by Harrison. We need the usual things for today, a copy of the poem, which I will attach to class charts, pencil for thoughts and ideas, and different coloured pens or highlighters for your annotations. As ever, we look at the title first, and always remember these poems, you can narrow down the meaning of these poems. They're not going to be about aliens or something. This is a love and relationships cluster of poems, so always think about them in those terms. Look at the title, because poets will tell you a lot with the title. A lot of thought goes into it. So what associations do you have with the words long distance? Far away, separation. It's likely to be perhaps about love gone wrong or something, or separation. And what do you expect this poem to be about? A relationship across geographical distance, perhaps? An emotional separation? A speaker who has had more than one long distance relationship? Okay, just some food for thought there. You don't have to write those down. You're just getting an idea of, your first thoughts of what you think the poem might be about. Now, the first reading of the poem, so read along with me. Who can tell me what enjambment is? Thank you very much, Hyan. Enjambment is, look at the end of that first line. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, there's nothing at the end of that line, is there? But it goes into the next line. So you read straight through. There's a lot of that in this. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, Dad kept her slippers. So I did that completely wrong. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, Dad kept her slippers warming by the gas. See, the first end stop is after gas. Anyway, I'll read it and we'll get an idea of what it's about. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, Dad kept her slippers warming by the gas, put hot water bottles her side of the bed and still went to renew a transport pass. You couldn't just drop in, you had to phone. He'd put you off an hour to give him time to clear away her things and look alone as though his still raw love was such a crime. He couldn't risk my blight of disbelief, though sure that he'd soon hear her key scrape in the rusted lock and end his grief. He knew she'd just popped out to get the tea. I believe life ends with death, and that is all. You haven't just gone shopping. Just the same, in my new black leather phone book there's your name and the disconnected number I still call. Now what is going on there? What is the mood of the poem? It's reflective. He's talking about going to visit his dad after his mother had died, and his dad used to clear away all the stuff that he kept out when no one else was there because he was so grief-stricken with the death of his wife. But now the dad's dead and he understands those rituals because he still keeps the telephone number of his dead father in his book to the disconnected line. Anyway, these are just first thoughts. So what is the mood of the poem? Well, it's very sombre, isn't it? It's very sad. It's a very sad poem. Who's speaking? It's a person talking, a middle-aged person probably, talking about his parents and their deaths. Who is speaking? Well, that person is. Who are they speaking to? Well, it's quite reflective. He's almost speaking to himself, or he could be just a conversation. He's speaking to someone nearby. How do they feel? Sad, and yet they've started to understand some of their father's slightly odd behaviour after his wife died. So just answer those four questions in full sentences. It doesn't matter if it's wrong, Year 10, just give it a go. The thing about poetry is you have to have a go. You get marks for having a go. So there's no, just get stuck into it. Answer those 4 and we'll go on to the next slide. I'll just give you 6 minutes to answer those. Right, here are some notes I do want you to write into your books. Long Distance 2 is a monologue, which is just one person speaking to whomever is listening, in which the speaker addresses the relationship with his recently deceased father, his recently dead father. They contemplate the nature of grief and how we make efforts to stay connected to our loved ones once they have passed. Initially, the speaker finds it hard to understand his father's reaction to his mother's death, but finds himself doing similar rituals once his father has passed. Died, that means. Like his dad used to keep the house set up, keep her slippers by the fire, and so on and so forth. He thought it was, a bit odd, but now that his dad's dead, he keeps his dad's number in his phone book and still sometimes rings a disconnected number. So it's a sort of sad, and he started to understand his dad as well. Put those notes in the green box into your book. 5 minutes to do that, then on to the next slide. Now, we understand the speaker's situation and the tone of the poem we just talked about. Read through it again, and this time I want you to make 2 annotations, one for language and one for structure, that show the tone that we agreed on. Once you've done that, see if you can work out what the rhyme scheme is. Remember that A, B at the end of the lines? I'll tell you in a slide or two, but see if you can work it out for yourself this time. 5 minutes for that then. Right, this time I'm going to take you through the poem in a minute, mentioning key details that you can annotate. And obviously any annotations of your own will be gratefully received. I've had some work from one of you, certainly, where they had done some annotations of their own, and they were impressive, not least because they'd done them. That's the thing, we have to start doing these things now. So there you are. This is what I want you to write this into your books as well: form and structure. Put a title: form and structure. Form is, what type of poem it is, and structure, we all know about structure from our looking at just ordinary writing. Structure is things like punctuation, dashes, and sentence length, and all those types of things. But there are specific things in poetry that we have to talk about, and we've got that glossary at the back of our books, that list of poetic terms. I hope you've all got at the back of your books, because we've got a couple more to add to it today. So the poem consists of 4 quatrains. Quatrain is simply a 4-line stanza. The stanzas are like the verses. They're like paragraphs, but they call them stanzas in poetry. They've got 4 lines. They're quatrains. Quad. So quatrains. The first 3 with A, B rhyme scheme, but this changes in the last stanza to A, B, A to reflect the change in the speaker's outlook. Iambic pentameter, remember that? Look it up in the back of your book. 10 syllables in a line with a stress on the second syllable to reflect the change in the speaker's outlook. It's mostly iambic pentameter, but is not consistent throughout. This could reflect the relationship between father and son, solid and steady with the odd misalignment. The poem is written in the past tense to emphasize the reflective tone. In the final stanza, Harrison switches to the present tense to show that he is not yet ready to let go of his father's memory and is still very much in the speaker's thoughts. Right, so copy those notes into your books. I've noticed that stanza's been spelt wrong there in the second paragraph. It should end with an A. Don't worry too much about that. Get those notes into your books and then on to the next slide. Okay, here we are, the dreaded annotations, which I want you to put onto your poem. So we'll go through these. In the starting top left, slippers and hot water bottles connote warmth, perhaps suggesting that the small but caring actions that were carried out by his father were a way to keep the connection he had to his wife. I think that's fairly obvious. That's why he's doing it, to be honest. Over to the right, naturalistic imagery is used throughout the first stanza. Slippers, hot water bottles, transport pass, all this sort of everyday stuff gives it an authentic tone. You really get an idea of what type of a house and what type of perhaps these people are. They're just ordinary people. Through these actions, the speaker's father is able to keep the same routines he had during his wife life, promoting normality. However, the tone changes in the second stanza. Plosive, which is like blight and disbelief, those words that like they're plosives, reflect that the son is aware of his father's feelings. He doesn't want to be caught being upset. The imagery of the rusted lock suggests time has passed, but his father is in denial about his wife's passing. Popped, that's an onomatopoeia, isn't it? Perhaps to emphasise her trip to the shops will be quick. It's hopeful and mournful and very sad at the same time. Going up to the top left, second one down, the enjambment, we all know what that is, don't we? He presents a speed in which his father has to clear away his mother's things to look alone. Raw love implies that despite time passing, the love felt is still strong and present. Crime has connotations of negative behaviour. Perhaps the speaker feels his father is ashamed to be seen to grieve. Switch to present tense to convey the speaker's view. He feels close to his dad when he sees the number. So copy those, just literally copy those annotations with, obviously make sure you've got the lines going to the relevant part of the poem into your books. That's going to take you quite a time, I would have thought, but it takes as long as it takes. So make sure that you get it done, Year 10. Right, this is the, we're at the point now where you need to make some notes and pick out some quotations. Right, you need to make some notes on the poem. You need to a paragraph on the speaker and their feelings and perspective, which we've discussed. You can go back and look at that if you need to. At least throw 3 quotations that you're going to put onto cue cards and memorise. Some literary terminology, you know, the enjambments and the metaphors, similes, all of those things. 1 point each you can make about language and structure. Okay? And now you just have to learn the 3 quotes ready for next time. So another tall order there, Year 10, but well done. I'd really like to see some more work from some of you. I appreciate it might be difficult, but if you can get it to me, then do. Yeah, so fantastic. Have a nice half term, Year 10, and I will speak to you when we get back. Thank you.